Hello students. In the previous session we have discussed about the introduction of mimesis and its evolution. Today we will discuss about Plato, poets put in exile for their imitation of shadows of the ideal. It is Plato who bequeaths to the tradition of literary criticism of the concept of imitation or mimesis. So, here it has been known to us that Plato is the initial critic who tried to define or try to conceptualize the concept of imitation of mimesis dominant in literary criticism as well as into the 18th century. In the Republic, the concept of imitation is given two meanings: a broadly philosophical one dealing with Plato's ontology and epistemology. First is related to philosophical, dealing with Plato's ontology and epistemology, which argues that the world of sense perceptions is but a poor shadow and imitation of a higher world where the ideals abound. The other concerning literary techniques, namely the pure imitative form, where the poet has his persona speak instead of himself. So here the writer wants to say that you want to be able to find Plato as a speaker in his piece of writings. He expresses his ideas to the character. In regard to the past sense of imitation, it is necessary to come back to the topic of way to locate the truth. In Plato's philosophical system, the world is divided into two domains: the phenomenon and the noumenon, or the world of sense perceptions and the world of ideals. So we can say there are two words for Plato: phenomenon and the noumenon, and world of sense perception, which is related to phenomenon, and noumenon is related to the world of ideals. The former is an ephemerally ever-changing one where the becoming is happening at every moment, while the latter is eternal and changeless. One that the truth or being it is its essence in Republic through Socrates' mouth. Plato locates reality in what are called ideas or forms rather than in the world of appearance or the phenomenon perceived through senses, the latter being mere copies or derivatives of the former. Thus, the unreliability of the perceptions gained through senses. He continues by arguing that the true knowledge can only be attained by the rational power exercised in dialectical search, which would finally lead to the truth. In Book 10, he illustrates his insistence of banishing the poets from his republic through the example of three bad: the ideal of bad, The bed made by a carpenter and the bed by a painter. The bed by a carpenter is a particular derivative from the universal and abstract idea of bed, but the bed by the painter is more inferior in that it is copied merely by the turning a mirror round the round, and therefore an imitation of appearance or an imitation of imitation, thus thrice removed from the kind and from the truth. Imitation is thrice removed from the truth, from the kind, imitation of imitation, imitation of appearance. So, here is some lines quote. And now we may finally take him and place him by the side of the painter, for he is like him in two ways. First, inasmuch as his creation have an inferior degree of truth, in this I say, he is like him. He is also like him in being concerned with an inferior part of the soul. Derived from Plato's point on the ideals, the theory of Book 4 that the human soul is constructed in three levels. Here, Plato talks about how the soul of a human being is constructed, and it is constructed in three levels, accounts for another reason for the exile of the poets. Human soul is, according to him, divided into three parts. Plato divides the human soul in three parts: the rational, the spirited, and the emotional, or the impulses, the first being the highest part and the third being the lowest part. So there are three parts of a human soul: rational, spirited, and emotional, or the impulses. He explains that the imitative poet is not by nature made, nor is his art intended to please or to affect the rational principle in the soul, but he will prefer the passionate and fitful temper, which is easily imitated. Hence, Plato's banishing the poets from his republic is justified in an ethical sense because the poet appeals to the lowest part of human soul and has the power of harming even the good. Here is the quotation. Therefore, we shall be right in refusing to admit him into a well ordered state, because he awakens and nourishes and strengthens the feelings and impairs the reason, as in city when the evil is permitted to have authority and the good are put out of the way, so in the soul of man the imitative poet implants an civil evil constitution, for he indulges the rational nature which has no discernment of greater and less. The second meaning of Platonic concept of imitation is technical one. So here, which is related to ideals. Plato has Socrates speak of book third of the three modes of telling a story. And in the second concept of the imitation, mimesis, the poet talks about three ways of telling a story. What you failed to apprehend before is now made clear to you. that poetry and mythology are, in some cases, wholly imitative. Instances of this are supplied by tragedy and comedy. There is likewise the opposite style, in which the poet is the only speaker. Of this, the dithyramb affords the best example, and the combination of both is found in epic, in several other styles of poetry. Combination of both is found in epic and several other styles of poetry. So, what are two bows? And a combination of poetry and mythology are found in epic and several other styles of poetry. The wholly imitative form where the poet as it presents personi speak, thus imitates its personi, as in the drama, is the most deceptive of the three because the author never speaks in his own voice, thus creating an effect of authorial detachment and a space for the autonomy of the characters. Such a literary technique, though not in a strict sense as first in details discussed by Plato, has exerted a great influence on the Western literary history. Later writers such as Robert Browning with his dramatic monologue in our mind, and T.S. Eliot with the theory of depersonalization and objective correlative, who claims that poetry is not a turning loose of emotion but an escape from emotion. T.S. Eliot, with his theory of depersonalization and objective correlatives, who claims that poetry is not a turning loose of emotion but who claims that uh, poetry is not a turning loose of emotion but an escape from emotion. It is not an expression of a personality but an escape of personality. Can all trace their inheritance to Plato's theory of mimesis as a literary technique. Nevertheless, Plato himself cannot completely resist the charm of poetry. He spares a little room for the written of poetry and comes with a challenge in the last few paragraphs of the book 10. And the book 10 of the Republic is very important for the students of literature. So, I would like to suggest to you to go to the book 10 of Plato, which has been prescribed in so many syllabus of universities and colleges. Later on, Plato's challenge is first accepted by his student Aristotle, who, based on his own philosophical elaboration on the truth and the concept of mimesis, justifies the existence of poetry, not just hymns to the gods and praises a famous man as proposed by Plato, see Book 10, Plato 2000s, and the written of the poets. So, thus we have discussed about three ways of telling a story, two concepts of mimesis. Plato have been talked about two, two meanings of mimesis, and he also have talked about two types of words. And the theory of impersonalization of T.S. Eliot is also based on Plato's theory of mimesis. So we can say theory of mimesis is the precursor of the theories of T.S. Eliot, and Robert Browning is also influenced by the theory of mimesis. So thank you. it is enough for today. We will discuss further in the further sessions. Thank you. Have a nice day.